Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we talk about the Imperium, specifically how the Inquisition wants to resurrect the Emperor. Now, these guys aren't your typical resurrectionists. They are specifically called Horusians, and we're going to talk about them today. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. And of course, if you have any suggestions or comments, pop it down in the comment section below. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on how the Inquisition wants to resurrect the Emperor. A Horusian is a member of one of the most extreme of the radical factions of the Inquisition, a sub-faction of the Xanthite Creed, that holds that the Arch-Traitor, Horus, might have succeeded in bending the warp to his will, had he not been opposed by his brother Primarchs. The Horusians believe that much like Horus, it is through the understanding of warp powers that the Imperium can resurrect the Emperor. The ideal of restoring the Emperor to the Imperium in mortal form is at the heart of the Inquisition's formation. In the dark days that followed Horus's invasion on Terra, and the Emperor's internment into the Golden Throne in the early years of the 31st millennia, the empire he had created was reeling in the aftermath of the Galactic Civil War and the Emperor's ascension. 4 individuals, trusted servants of the Emperor during the building of the Galactic Empire, gathered together to discuss what was to happen. They were divided in opinion, with 2 believing that the Imperium of Man could not survive without the Emperor to directly lead humanity, while the other 2 were adamant that the Emperor had ascended to a higher plane and that it was foolish to interfere with this course of events as they had unfolded. The 2 resurrectionists, known only as Promius and Moriana, left Terra to begin their quest of bringing the Emperor back to life, while the 2 that remained acted quickly to establish themselves within the newly formed Senatorum Imperialis. Known to the surviving Primarchs as loyal servants, these 2 began to lay the plans for the formation of an organization that would combat the efforts of the 2 dissidents. Thus were the seeds of the Inquisition itself sown. With the backing of the Primarchs, the 2 first Inquisitors made themselves known to the High Lords and began to recruit like-minded individuals from amongst the adepts and warriors on Terra. Their dream of an organization dedicated to the protection of the Emperor would not be realized in their lifetimes, even extended as they were with arcane technologies, and the Inquisition, as it is seen today, did not fully come into existence until the 32nd millennia, by which time the Imperium itself and its many institutions were beginning to grow and spread across the galaxy. Promius and Moriana were not idle during this time, and in the wake of the news of the Emperor's ascension, gathered together a following of their own, particularly amongst those cults and sects that were now appearing on many worlds claiming the deification of the Emperor. At some point, Moriana and Promius split, their goals still the same, but Moriana determined to use whatever means necessary to achieve her aim. Fearful that Moriana would unleash unspeakable powers of chaos to achieve her goal, Promius created a small army of dedicated followers to combat the menace he believed she posed. These 2 factions clashed many times until Promius' disciples prevailed and Moriana disappeared, probably into the Eye of Terror. As the Inquisition grew and its presence was felt further and further from Terra, it came into contact with the Promians. Several hundred standard years had passed since the fateful First Conclave, and even then the Inquisition, ever a confederacy of individuals rather than a single body, was pursuing several different agendas. The original intent to prevent the reincarnation of the Emperor had been diluted over the centuries, and when the Promians were discovered fighting against an ill-specific chaos threat, they were brought into the fold. Neither the Inquisitors that contacted the sect, nor the Promians themselves were aware of the irony of their cooperation, and thus the first Resurrectionist Inquisition faction was created. For nearly a standard millennia, the Promians continued on their quest, combating threats to the Emperor, while seeking a means by which he might be brought back to a mortal body. The research of the Promians rivaled the greatest libraries of the Imperium, but it was dispersed across the galaxy, like pieces of a puzzle scattered over a wilderness. By the 33rd millennium, the Inquisition boasted several thousand Inquisitors and hundreds of thousands of acolytes and other agents, but was still little more than an individual band of dedicated men and women pursuing their own goals. with little or no organization amongst themselves. Thus were the seeds of heresy allowed to take root once more. It is not known whether Moriana herself was still alive at this point, unnaturally sustained perhaps by the energies of the Eye of Terror, but her legacy was to make itself felt again. Over a period of several centuries, those inquisitors that had once claimed to be Promians began to pursue a new philosophy. Amongst the great number of texts compiled over the millennia by their predecessors was a growing body of information concerning the introspection on the nature of Horus and his possession by Chaos Undivided. Considered by many to be unholy tomes, whose secrets were best left forgotten, these texts once more began to be rediscovered and entered circulation and debate. As the resurrectionists took greater note of these works, a splinter philosophy began to form, eventually to be dubbed the Horusians. Unwittingly, they were continuing the work of Moriana, investigating the possibility of using the power of chaos to restore the Emperor to a mortal form fit for his immense psychic presence in the warp. The nature of their work took them to some of the most uncharted areas of the galaxy, in particular around the Eye of Terror, and unobserved by most, they grew in number and influence. A few true Promians still remained, and as they became aware of what was happening, they were horrified. Only a handful had ever read the first teachings of Promius, or had been recruited by inquisitors that had seen his works, but they immediately recognized the hand of Moriana in the beliefs of the Horusians. Now a dwindling faction spread across the Imperium. The few Promians that remained did what they could to thwart the efforts of the Horusians, but there was little they could do, and by the end of the 34th millennium, the Horusians were a dominant part of the Inquisition's agenda. It was a woman named Stalia von Dresen that stood against the tide. She had been inducted into the Inquisition by a man named Lord Foran, who had in his possession a second-generation copy of Promius's original works. This had been passed from master to apprentice for nearly 2,500 standard centuries, and the keepers of the book were all dedicated Promians. Inheriting this mantle, von Dresen was still young and idealistic. Warned by her mentors of the threat posed by the Horusians, von Dresen made it her life's work to combat this menace and see the Horusians' power broken. Abandoning her normal inquisitorial duties, von Dresen embarked upon a lifetime of traveling, contacting as many of her fellow inquisitors as was possible. With the Book of Promius as her guide, she began to recruit to her cause, particularly amongst the oldest and most respected inquisitors, as well as creating anti-Horusian cells in the worlds that she visited. Now well respected amongst the higher circles of the Inquisition, she met Lord Inquisitor Aldrin Bagden. Between them, they spent 2 standard decades on Terra itself, and using references and clues from the Book of Promius, they found some of the texts created by the original founders of the Inquisition. Though these were truly ancient and terribly incomplete, the two of them pieced together enough information to show them the original schism between the Inquisition and the Promians. Aged 120 Terran years old, von Dresen reached a harsh decision. For her entire life, she had dedicated to the Promian cause, and now had to search deep in her heart to admit that it had been a fool's errand. It is a testament to her conviction that Horusianism had to be stopped that she destroyed her copy of the Book of Promius, and with Bagden initiated a massacre of pro-resurrectionist inquisitors. By the time she died, aged 304 Terran years, this new order was beginning to establish itself, and the Horusians were embattled and dwindling. By the start of the 35th millennia, the Inquisition had turned full circle, and resurrectionism was once again all but eliminated from the Inquisition's goals. Despite the mass murders of the 35th millennium, Horusian ideals have waxed and waned in popularity ever since the founding of the Inquisition. The Horusian ideal is quite simple, and yet also unpalatable for many inquisitors, even those with a fundamentally resurrectionist outlook. Their assumption is that somehow the powers of chaos that manifested themselves in Horus might be harnessed for the creation of a divine avatar, or perhaps in the process of transferring the Emperor's soul from its current form into the body of a living god. To better understand the modern Horusian ideology, we must look at one of the Inquisition's most unholy tools in their fight against chaos, the demon host. A demon host is the otherworldly beast created when a powerful demon is bound into a living human host body and enslaved to its creator's will by means of a dark ritual. Horusians hope to take the immensely powerful soul of the Emperor and bind him into a living host, thus resurrecting the Emperor of mankind as a demon host. The problem with humanity's current understanding of this dark art is that no warp entity as powerful as the Emperor has ever been bound to a host, and the knowledge to perform such powerful binding rituals is found in the scant few tomes and unreliable books collected through the ages, if at all. These books are filled with malefic and demonic lore, and are often very rare, very old, and full of flaws. This is where the Horusians believe Horus's powers, gifted to him by chaos, would be the key to performing such a potent ritual, but the results could be disastrous, both for humanity and the Emperor's soul. Even if the Horusians obtain the knowledge to bind the Emperor, a victim is required. This human host must be of immense physical and psychic powers to allow the Emperor's full potential to course through his body. A Primarch's body, specifically Sanguinius's body, which lies protected on the Blood Angel's homeworld of Bao, where he was buried deep within the vast tomb beneath the Blood Angel's main chapel, has been speculated to be a viable option by many Horusians. The only problem is that no demon host has ever been created by binding a demon with an animal or a corpse, meaning that if the Emperor is to be brought back through Sanguinius, the binding would be a first of its kind. Considered radicals except by themselves, the Horusians are few in number, but fanatical in their cause. They tend to be older inquisitors, frustrated by the lack of answers provided by other resurrectionist theories, and therein lies the danger. Chaos and its power can never be viewed as a quick route to success, for in that direction lies damnation. Quite apart from the normal anti-resurrectionist arguments, many inquisitors view Horusians with suspicion, out of the fear that they are dabbling with possession and the warp intrusion endangers those around them and the Imperium in general. However, the most experienced Horusians are well versed in the perils of the warp and chaos, and so are numbered amongst the most proficient and dedicated demon hunters in the entire Inquisition. Like all such philosophies, the Horusians must tread a path along a precipice of dedicated service to the Imperium and the fulfillment of their research. It is a path that most have trodden wisely, but not all the Horusians have remained faithful, and perhaps like Moriana, 10,000 standard years ago, have succumbed to the lure of the ruinous powers. And those were 40 facts on how the Inquisition wants to resurrect the Emperor. Again, this is part of a grander philosophy called Xanthites or Xanthism. Check out our 40 facts on Xanthite or Xanthism. It basically explains how the Imperium wants to harness warp powers. So they see chaos as a tool, kind of like these Horusians who see the powers of binding a demon into a body and things like that as a tool to use against chaos itself. So check out our 40 facts on that to get more details as to what other methods have been found by Inquisitors to use warp powers for their benefit. It's really awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I might do a 40 facts on all the different ways that the Resurrectionists in general think that they can bring back the Emperor, because it's a really interesting topic. We'll talk about the Star Child, the Conclave, we'll talk about just a bunch of other cool things that have come up throughout the history of the Imperium that have allowed the Emperor to be resurrected. And if you know of any, just comment down below, even if I've already mentioned it, and then I'll use your guys' comments to research and try to gather every single resurrectionist method or ideology. I hope you guys enjoyed these videos. If you do, share them with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media you guys use. By you guys spreading the word of One Mind Syndicate, we can continue to put out more content, specifically more, fluffy and good content. Now, don't forget that we have a special giveaway going on right now. The Horrible Realities of a Chaos Space Marine is still going on. If you check out that video, you can comment and get a chance to win a Chaos starter set. So don't forget about that. But other than that, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.